Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win, and we're back for another edition of Diablo 3. Today on the channel, we are going to take a look at the Mundunugu Regalia set for the Witchdoctor class, which unfortunately got hit with the Nerf hammer, so to speak, in Season 23 of Diablo. It's not a major one, though. People are making it out to be a bit more than what it is, so I'm bringing this up on the screen for you right now. Mundunugu's Regalia. 2-piece bonus, Big Bad Voodoo now follows you and lasts twice as long. 4-piece bonus, gain 60% damage reduction for 30 seconds when you enter Spirit Realm. That means Spirit Walk. Then the 6-piece bonus basically powers up your Spirit Barrage. So we're going to be using also on the set Captain Crimson. 2-piece, 6%. Or 6,000 life per second, reduces cooldown and resource cost. 3-piece bonus, more damage that you do based on the amount of cooldown reduction you have on your armor. We're also going to be using the Compass Rose with the Traveler's Pledge. That says 2-piece bonus. When moving damage, you take less. And when you're standing still, you do more damage. Lacumba's Ornament, we're also going to be using. And this is Gazing Demise. This is actually what has been changed. The damage of Spirit Barrage is increased by 125%, up to 130 usually. Spirit Barrage gains the Phantasm Ruin and lasts twice as long. They changed it. It never used to have that twice as long part, which means it actually lasts a bit less. So we're going to be using for our skills Piranha's Pirando, Spirit Barrage Mundunugu, which is where all your pretty much damage is coming from. Spirit Walk, Jaunt. This is how we get the defensive buff from the 4-piece bonus. We're also going to be using Soul Harvest to increase the amount of intelligence. Big Bad Voodoo. And we're also going to be using Locust Swarm, Disease Swarm. Normally on this build, you wouldn't have to rely so much on that. Now you have to, based on the bit of the nerf that is. Blood Ritual is one of your passives. Confidence Ritual is another passive that you're going to use. Grave Injustice. There will be a link in the description to this, so don't worry if you can't catch all of this. In the Knights Cube, the Barber, absolutely necessary. Mask of Jerome, absolutely necessary. Ring of Royal Grandeur. Mask of Jerome actually powers up your Big Bad Voodoo because it follows you along. And it's a pet, so that's why we use it in the set for those of you who are not familiar with that. Now, for the purposes of this showcase, to show you why this nerf kind of does impact the game a little bit, but it also is not the end-all to be-all that the internet has been talking about. I'm going to do a greater riff 60, 65, 70, 75, and 80. Now, for those of you who are new to Mundunugu, first thing you want to do, and mostly the only thing you want to do, the minute you get into the greater riff, start casting Spirit Barrage. Spirit Barrage, think of it kind of like a sprinkler. You don't want to hold in the R button unless you are going against mobs that are very tanky, that have to take a lot more damage. So what you want to do really is you're going to want to tap in whatever you have your button as. I'm playing on the Switch platform. All the information that I provide here works on all platforms, including the PC, so don't worry. It's all the same, just different platform you're playing on. So basically what you want to do is obviously Spirit Barrage when you get into the Grey Ref. Cast your Big Bad Voodoo as fast as possible so that can follow you around. And remember, the one we're using particularly heals us. We're also getting a little bit of damage increase from that. Then pretty much you're going to go Spirit Barrage. You look for a big area of mobs that you basically can get next to and not take a lot of damage. And then you want to cast your Soul Harvest. Make sure you get your Soul Harvest stacks to 10. When you get it to 10, you're going to be hitting for about 4,000 damage. Raw damage, guys. So basically, that's what you're going to want to do. Every time you think you're going to take a lot of damage, use your Spirit Walk to enter your Spirit Realm. You're basically invincible for the amount of time that you're in the Spirit Realm doing the Spirit Walk. When you come out of the Spirit Walk, you get an increase to your defense, which will help on higher greater rifts significantly. And if you pretty much run into a monster that is taking too long to kill, or you just want to do more damage, cast your Locust Swarm while you're casting your Spirit Barrage. You can kind of multitask here. But always think of Spirit Barrage as like a sprinkler going off. Its attack radius is basically a sprinkler going off. And you're basically controlling the amount of the water flow by tapping the R button or holding it in. And that's the best way I can really explain to you how it feels to run Mundunugu. Now, on Greater Rift 60, you're basically on Torment 13 difficulty. Most things on an optimized Captain Crimson Mundunugu set on Greater Rift 60 is not really going to feel like you're being impacted by the nerf to the Gazing Demise offhand weapon. fact of the matter is, you're really not going to really experience much of a change outside of maybe if you run into one of the elite pack mobs where the monster has the built-in shield. You're going to also probably take you a significantly longer time to kill it as opposed to pre-season 20 freeways. That case, you just cast a Locust Swarm and you let out the barrage, and you're going to kill it fast. But you just got to add an extra step to your damage output. Now, in terms of optimization, what should you be doing with this armor to get the most maximum performance out of it? Great question. Here's the answer to it. On your helm, my recommendation, now, you don't have to take the recommendation, but this is my recommendation as to how I get to push higher greater rifts doing these things. On your helm, my recommendation would be get on your helm 6.0 crit hit chance. 6.0 preferably. If you could get 8.0, but that relies heavily on if you get a primal ancient legendary or ancient legendary with that particular role. So just go for 6.0 usually. Get 6.0 on your helm for crit hit chance. On your gloves, some people call them bracers, either or. What you want is these free stats. And I know it's going to be hard because RNG in Diablo is probably not the kindest. You're going to be paying or praying to RNGesus. On your gloves, I recommend that you get at least an attack speed of 6.0. The highest you can get is 8.0. Whatever roll you get, work with it because it's going to work even at 6.0. That was a clear time of 3 minutes and 22 seconds, by the way. Greater Rift 60, which is Torment 13 difficulty for anybody who doesn't know. All right. So, with the gloves, 6.0 at least attack speed. Crit hit damage of 50%. Try to get, I know that's a hard roll, but if you have enough depth buffs, you should be able to do that just fine. Also on your gloves, crit hit chance. If you have an ancient legendary, it should come out at 8.0%. 6.0% is perfectly fine as well. We're talking about maybe a 200, 400k damage difference maybe, at best. Try to get all three of those stats because that will maximize the amount of damage that you're getting out of your gloves. On your shoulders, since we are using Captain Crimson, my recommendation is to get cooldown reduction, preferably 8.0%. But if you get a 6.0, 7.0, or 8.0 and you have to mess with Earth stats on the shoulder, in reality, you should only really be messing, though, with the cooldown reduction. Put cooldown reduction on it. That's Captain Crimson. More cooldown reduction you have, the more damage output that you have, and the less damage you take as well, which is very important as you're going higher up on the greater rifts. So that's what you want on the shoulders. On the boots, if you see that you have a possibility to get cooldown reduction, put cooldown reduction on your boots. If not, movement speed, 12%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but you'll be moving a little bit quicker in your greater rift, so if you're trying to get high leaderboard placement. On the breastplate, anywhere you can that has Spirit Barrage where you can increase it to 15% damage, do it. Your main source of damage in this build is always going to be Spirit Barrage. Despite the nerf, it's still very powerful. Wherever you have a chance to get 15% where it's not going to impact your amount of cooldown reduction or your crit hit chance ratio, which are very important for this particular build, do it. It's going to help you out long term. Other than that, really, the rest of the stats, it's kind of one of those things where chances are you're going to constantly be swapping out your pieces for better ancient legendary pieces to get the maximum stats. Diablo is pretty much about the journey, not so much the destination. People have fun basically on grinding through things. So if you're one of those people that doesn't mind working for things, you're probably going to be swapping out pieces quite a lot. Obviously, also, in terms of optimizing your armor, you want to augment your legendary gems into it. My recommendation depends. If you're playing seasonal, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. If you're a non-seasonal character, I would recommend leveling up your gems to at least level 80 and then augmenting them in. If you're having trouble clearing through greater rifts because maybe something's not fully optimized, you can augment at a lower level. I wouldn't do anything lower than 70, but let's say you're really struggling and you need like an extra 200 damage, maybe augment at level 50 gems. The one thing that people don't often tell you is you can overwrite anything that you've augmented in terms of armor. So if you augment a level 50 gem, you can overwrite that with a level 80 gem that you augment later. It's not etched in stone. It's not the end-all to be all. Very common misconception people have when they are playing Diablo 3, so definitely don't worry. If you need to kind of augment to get a little bit further to be able to level up the gems, do so. It's going to take a little longer. My recommendation, though, if you're non-seasonal, level these gems at 80. 100 would be best, but that's not capable of everybody being able to clear that high greater rift so early on. If you're seasonal, probably level 50, 60 till you hit greater rift 70, then start working on level 80 augmentations. If you were trying to go for this in your seasonal journey, keep in mind this is not the Hadred's Gift. Hadred's Gift for the season is the armor I covered last week, which is available in the playlist. That is Helltooth Harness, which is a zombie build bear. That's kind of the most optimal build. That pretty much you're going to want to use to farm for this, and then pretty much when you get Mundunugu, swap out your Helltooth. Listen to my advice on this. I'm saving you a world of hours in terms of how far you're going to get in your seasonal journey. That was a 3-minute and 11-second clear time, 65 Greater Rift, which is Torment 14 equivalent difficulty. All right. This is a Greater Rift 70. At Greater Rift 70, you are going to start noticing your clear times go down a little bit more than they used to. Reason for that is the nerf to the offhand weapon, which is Gazing Demise. So what are you going to want to do in this particular situation? Easy answer. First, when you get into these greater rifts, it's crucial that you do your soul harvest as early as possible. What I generally like to do is I like to spirit walk into a elite pack. I come out of the spirit walk in the center of the elite pack, and then I soul harvest. Chances are you're usually going to have about 10 enemies around you when you do this. So that way you can get the full 10 stack. And those sprinklers, keep in mind, this is like attacking in a sprinkler pattern. It's going to sprinkle all over, and it's going to deal all that damage to everything, and you're going to be able to poon things. It's the end goal here, right? Okay. So that's what you want to do. Also, because as you go higher up in the greater rifts, the amount of HP that mobs have, particularly elite packs, is much more significant. Keep in mind, we are using Locust Swarm, and we are using the Ring of Emptiness on this set. Because we are using the Ring of Emptiness on this set, when you cast your Locust Swarm, the rest of your damage outputs deal more damage. This is when you hit greater of 70 and above, you have to start cycling between using your Locust Swarm more and having your Spirit Barrages kind of just take out the knockout punch. So you usually want to go Locust Swarm, Spirit Barrage, Locust Swarm, Spirit Barrage. Since you're using the Pestilence Rune, Locust Swarms are going to move to the next target nearest to it when it is killed. That's why most people use that, and that's how you kind of take out the more bulky things. The only real difference with your Greater Rift 70 clearings compared to last season and the many seasons before that when it was invented, this armor set, it's one of the newer Witchdoctor sets, for those who don't know, is you're basically using an extra step in your window than you normally would. You have to take a little bit more time to cast an extra skill, but you will still do the damage. And you're going to do a lot of damage still, despite the fact that the offhand was nerfed. So don't worry about that. Now, in terms of legendary gems that you are going to be using on this armor, my recommendation, and this is going to be pretty much the recommendation of many other people that play Diablo 3, is that you use Bane of the Stricken, because Spirit Barrage, especially if you're holding it in to attack targets, usually you're going to hold it in to attack targets at very high greater rifts. Mostly Rift Guardians, guys, so don't, stress it. You're still going to tap most of the way through these things. My recommendation, Bane of the Stricken, because when you get to that Rift Guardian, you have to hold in Spirit Barrage to then release it. That's considered accumulated damage, which is what Bane of the Stricken modifies the amount of damage you do to. So you want to use that. Bane of the Trap, why? Because even though we are not using skills that slow things down in this build, when you augment the Bane of the Trap to level 25, it automatically will cast slow. And when it automatically casts slow, you get the first bonus of Bane of the Trap. That's good. The last gem that you're going to want to use in your armor is Goak of Swiftness. People are going to ask, well, why not another gem to fix your defense? You want cooldown reduction as much as possible because you are using Captain Crimson. More cooldown, more damage means you can push greater rifts higher. Also, it doubles over that the cooldown of Soul Harvest, which is something that you need to consistently try to keep your 10 stacks of cools down very, very fast. So fast that it's like you can almost always cast your Soul Harvest, which without Goaka's Swiftness, you are probably not going to be able to do. And as you get higher up in the graveyard, you need to consistently maintain your 10 stacks of Soul Harvest so you can do the maximum amount of damage to be able to clear things super fast. So that's why we are using Goak of Swiftness. Now, all these things will be available in the description. A link to the armor for those of you who need to see it on paper. That's just kind of how I roll here. I prefer to show you guys how it works visually because sometimes you will make an armor if you're new to Diablo 3 without really knowing how it works, and then when you try to play it, you kind of don't have a clue. So that's why I do visual showcases as opposed to just talk your ear off with things on paper and show you all these static graphics. Very important to show you how things work. And as you can see, the Rift Guardian went down very fast. How did I do that? Simple. Cast Locust Swarm, hold in Spirit Barrage, release it. Probably after about 5 seconds, it's going to die super fast. Sometimes it'll die even before you're able to release the button on Spirit Barrage because it's just taking so much damage accumulated from other things. So, and as you saw, we were swinging for 30k damage before certain buffs happened. That is basically all the pieces working together in conjunction with each other for synergy. Always important to have synergy in your Diablo 3 builds because everything needs to work together and work in unison to achieve the end goal. Now, Mundunugu is still going to be considered an S-tier armor for those of you who want high leaderboard placement in Season 23 of Diablo. Right now, it looks like Whirlwind Barbarian is the 4-minute clear time career of 7. Normally, this would be 3-minute clear time, but keep in mind the dungeon layout as well as the fact that the nerf does impact the clear time somewhat. That's a career of 75 that we are doing now. This might be quicker, ironically, because mobs and elite packs show up more often, and if we take advantage of our Soul Harvest, we should be able to do that. Now, in terms of leaderboard, I've been looking at the leaderboards of Diablo 3. Whirlwind Barbarian is clearly the seasonal journey armor that everybody is using. Firebird is surprisingly up there, although Firebird cannot, like, clear greater Rift 150s by itself. It's doing pretty good. Just surprised. People seem to like the Firebird change. Gears of Dreadland is still doing extremely well. There's an interesting Bolos build that people have been telling me about. I'm going to try that out somewhere down later on the season. What I want to do first is I wanted to cover all the armors that got new changes to it, as well as our seasonal journey armors. So Mundunugu looks like it's still going to be very high in leaderboard placement. It still clears things very fast. People were asking and crying about why this particular armor was nerfed. Well, Season 22, Season 21 of Diablo were very dominated by two armors, Gears of Dreadland and Mundunugu. Why? Because they just speed through things so fast, and it was getting to the point where when you wanted to augment gems for our armors, you would use those sets to just grind the gems and then put the gems in the box. If you're playing non-seasonal, this doesn't work for seasonal. And then when you start and go into the box, those gems are augmented already for the air class, and then you can augment that way. So Mundunugu and Gears of Dreadland, people would use those to farm gems. You could level a gem up to like level 80, 100 with these sets if you're like high-end Diablo player, or high-end armors at least. Very fast, guys. Like, could probably level something to level 80 within an hour as long as you had the resources. Blizzard obviously never really intended for those armors to cause an over-centralized meta, where that's the only armors people were using, and then everything else just kind of got pushed backside. So the only way they could really fix it was nerf the offhand. There was talk that they were going to nerf the actual Mundunugu set and do less damage to Spirit Barrage. That really didn't pan out so well when they were trying to test it out. Gears of Dreadland's nerf kind of hit it on the mark, as much as people were upset, because it nerfed it enough that it took away a lot of its ridiculous power, where unoptimized it was able to clear things. Basically, what happens now with this nerf is normally somebody could build a Mundunugu set in Season 22 and 21 of Diablo and not have to augment ancient legendaries or legendary gems into our ancient legendary pieces. That's basically what it did. And you could kind of clear 2 greater if 80, 85 without really having an augment outside of 1. Now that they've nerfed the offhand a bit, what's going to end up happening is for people to achieve higher greater roof climbing, they're going to have to invest more time in leveling up the legendary gems to 80 to then augment them into the armor, which means chances are, unless you have full ancient legendary pieces of armor for everything in the set, it's going to take you a while. Now, this Rift Guardian is going to take a while, so you have to use Spirit Barrage in conjunction with Locust Swarm. I just fired off the Locust Swarm to kill the enemy very fast, and that's pretty much how you take out the Rift Guardian. Always, when you get higher up, also make sure you're Spirit Walking, because you basically become invulnerable for a while, and then when you come out of it, you have more damage reduction, which is important. Look at that. 4,220k damage that you're doing. This is because of the amount of cooldown reduction we have, thanks to also Golaric Swiftness, as well as the buffs going off. And remember, you're walking through pylons, so the pylons do give you buffs as well. And we also get a bit more defense because we did cast the Locust Swarm, and the shoulder piece, not the shoulders, I guess it's like the upper arm area, I think they call that the bracers, if I remember correctly, actually gives us a bit more tank here. Just leveling up random gems right now. Again, the gems you're using in this is Golaric Swiftness, Bane of the Trap, and Bane of the Stricken. Don't try to experiment with other gems. It's not going to work. If you don't have a Bane of the Stricken, let's say you're early in your seasonal journey, you decide that you're swapping out Hell 2 for this. Bane of the Powerful will take you up to about greater of 60, maybe even 65, fine. When you get to greater of 70 and 75, it's going to take longer to kill greater Rift Guardians. So because it takes longer to kill Rift Guardians, you need Bane of the Stricken over Bane of the Powerful. Bane of the Powerful becomes useless. Don't fret, because what most people do is they just use that level 70 Bane of the Powerful to augment a armor piece. And, you know, they just pay for it that way, so it's one. So you can start with Bane of the Powerful, but when you start seeing that things are taking a lot longer for you to kill, it is basically time to swap out for Bane of the Stricken. Roughly, I say greater of 70. You probably shouldn't be using Bane of the Powerful anymore, because it's just not going to give you as much mileage anymore as having Bane of Stricken, Bane of the Trap, and Golaric Swiftness. Honestly, I would recommend getting your Golaric Swiftness up as early as possible because of cooldown. Now, if you're playing this as a seasonal character, you're not going to have Captain Crimson plans available. How do you get Captain Crimson's plans? That's very simple. Captain Crimson is a plan that is dropped from goblins that you usually encounter when you're just playing through Diablo III. Goblins don't show up as often in Greater Rifts. However, they show up quite a bit when you're doing bounties, since you're going to be looking for a lot of things like a good barber particular weapon, and you're going to need to connive cuping. You're going to be doing a lot of bounties anyway in the beginning of your seasonal journey, usually. So, basically, you want to just keep doing bounties. You're going to run into goblins. The more goblins that you kill, and even, like, getting cachets from Tyrael, because Tyrael does have a chance of dropping plans as well, eventually you're going to run into the Captain Crimson. And the good thing about consistently doing the bounties is that when it's time for you to craft the Captain Crimson set, you're already going to have the materials required to craft it, and you can craft multiples, because preferably you want to see an ancient legendary of them drop, but it's very pricey and very expensive, the materials to use. They're materials that you get from bounties, and you only get them from bounties, and if you're just constantly doing bounties anyway, you're going to get them. I'll give you a little bit of a tip. Most of the bounties that you're going to need to do to get, particularly for Captain Crimson, is Act 3, Act 4, and Act 5. Those are the ones that you need. Those are the ones where you really get the Captain Crimson pieces that you need to craft. So those are probably the ones you want to focus on, but keep in mind you also need a Ring of the Royal Grandeur to be able to use Captain Crimson and Mundunugu together. So how you get that? Simple answer. Have to complete bounties on Act 1 or Act 2, and there is a chance when you open the bounty chest that there will be a Ring of Royal Grandeur. Doesn't take too long. Sometimes if you don't get the first time, do about 2 or 3 runs that way, and you will get it. It's very rare that you will go more than 2 or 3 runs without seeing a Captain, or not Captain Crimson, seeing a Ring of Royal Grandeur. So keep that in mind. Now, as you can see here, we're in a Greater of 80, and it is taking a little bit longer than it normally would to take out things. This is where that nerf to Gazing Demise happens. Since it's kind of nerfed and it doesn't really last forever now, the Spectres, and they just hang around long enough to do a little bit of damage, it's taking longer. It's doing less damage, is basically. So, in theory, if you get to this point and you see that it's taking a little too long, and even with Locust Swarm, it's not really like kind of one-shotting things. I'm still one-shotting things, so I might sound like I'm complaining, but I'm just showing you that this is, now it's starting to factor in that nerf more significantly than on those lower grade rift. You know, what you're going to do is if you see it's taking too long, that's the sign that you need to go back and optimize. So look in your home, look in your gloves. Did you get the crit hit chances where you should need them in attack speed? If not, go back. Are your rings? Do your rings have crit hit damage of any sort on them or your necklace? If they don't, gotta start looking at our options to optimize that way. Then really, if that's not working, it's time to augment Ancient Legendary Gems. Always focus on trying to get Ancient Legendary or pieces. If you have a normal piece, you can't augment your armor. So if you're new to Diablo 3 in that regard, that's a little bit of a heads up there. Alright, we're getting close to the end of the Grey Rift, so I would say about 3 or 4 minutes here. Maybe 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute. We'll get a very good density of mobs, elite packs, cape on here. Then we're going to be fine. I took that hit there because I have Captain Crimson with Goak Swiftness as well, so we can tank hits. This is actually a good example of where soul harvesting is coming extremely important, because these things would take less damage if I didn't have 10 stacks. So always try to maintain your 10 stack. Alright, we are Paragon level 1,269 now. That answers the question for anybody. What Paragon level am I? Alright, so that wasn't even really a minute, so that was pretty fast. We were able to clear out. That was a good dense pop. Case in point, here we are going to build up Spirit Barrage. I'm going to cast Locust Swarm, and then you release, and it dies because all those things accumulate, and it kind of goes off like explosion. Easy peasy, right? Yeah, you just got to focus on a couple things. When you get into the Greater Rift, cast your Spirit Barrage, look for a large area of mobs, Soul Harvest. Then after you Soul Harvest and you got the 10 stacks, Spirit Walk, because you want to get a defensive buff. As you're doing this, your Spirit Barrage is going off. Constantly tap and click the Spirit Barrage. If you run into an enemy that you can't take down, Locust Swarm and then Spirit Barrage, Locust Swarm and Spirit Barrage. Always keep in mind that you have to keep your Soul Harvest stacks at 10. As you get higher up in the Greater Rift, case in point here, you have to really maintain the 10 stacks, maintain Locust Swarm and Spirit Barrage windows in particular. And always, when you see that you're going to take a lot of hits, make sure you Spirit Walk for that damage reduction. That was a 5-minute clear time Greater Rift 80. That's still pretty good. If you want to get it down to 3 minutes, make sure you just have more augmented pieces of armor, and that will go down. This nerf is not that bad, not really going to be game-breaking or impact things much. Just like the Gears of Dreadland, that's kind of people on the internet crying that the sky is falling when obviously it is not. This is still perfectly good. This is still... Ooh, gotta be careful. I don't want to unequip that. This is still perfectly the best armor to use for the Witchdoctor's class. This is still much, much higher tier than anything else you're going to play. The only thing probably that can be on par with this is Jade Harvester. But Jade Harvester is going to drop off quite a bit compared to this. So, it was nerfed, yes. The nerf does not impact things greatly. If you have augmentations on things and have things optimized, you will be just fine. Which is basically my point as to debunking the myth of if this nerf killed Mundunugu. No, it did not. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Thanks for watching. As always, make sure to give a like and subscribe as it helps the channel grow. And I will see you Friday for the next Diablo 3 video.